This time on Captain Chaos's laboratory, excuse me, we're going to be working on Tinkertown Toy Factory by Lemax. So here it is. It's a porcelain house. It's older. I don't know the year, but it probably says it under the mat. But anyhow, it didn't arrive in the best shaped box. This was broke off, and then the crane boom is also broke off. It's possibly even broke off before. It almost looks like it may have been glued at one point, but it goes like that. So we'll fix that later. So it's plugged in. There's no movement. Music works. It's ungodly loud, but there's no movement and there's a high-pitched squeal. So this belt's supposed to move, and I'm sure these gears do too. Crane would be cool if it did, but I doubt it. It looks like it's a solid piece. I haven't seen this piece, so I can't tell you. Looks like all the lights work. We'll turn on real fast just to double check. Yeah, yep, all the lights work. So, all right, let's delve into it. It looks like it may have been opened once before, because it looks like the foam on the bottom is not the OEM. Because it kind of looks like the foam I use, where when I can't get it off, I put the house down and then cut it out with a razor knife all the way around. Yeah, so it'll probably come off easier than the OEM. Yeah, this looks like the double back stuff that I've started using. And it says Lemax 2005. They always engrave it in the porcelain. Yeah, it has been opened before, so this is the aftermarket type foam that you can get from, I get mine from Michael's, but they might sell to other locations. So this is the double back tape that they pre-put on it, which is also still on the bottom here. Like that. And so, let's see if this center piece will pop out. Yeah. Definitely caught on something. First, let's remove some of the debris that's coming out of it. We got chunks of foam, which is probably from its original packing box. It did not come in a foam clamshell. It arrived wrapped in bubble wrap inside of its OEM box. And it's in decent shape for, like I said, the way the box arrived. So, I would think it would come out the bottom, but if you try and push this center mechanism down, these gears are trying to come with it. So, I'm wondering if the gears pull off, so you can pull the mechanism. So I'm going to use the spudger that has this notch in it, and see if I can get one of these gears to move in the outward position. So I can't get it to move there. Let's see if I can get it to move from the inside. And the answer is no. They don't want to move. Because if I jar this, you should be able to see those gears moving. I'm wondering if they were glued on and they're not supposed to be. They're supposed to be pressed on. So go to a slightly larger persuader. This way I can grab the shaft the gear sits on and not put any pressure on the plastic gear, just on the shaft that protrudes through. No movement. Let's try the next one. No movement. Let's try the big one. The big one has movement. It slides right off the shaft. So there's the hole in the back. Okay, let's try the yellow one. And the yellow one comes off. And that one actually took the shaft with it, which means that if there's a gear inside, it's probably not pressed in. Now let's go back up to the top two. Let's see if I can... There we go. And that one took the pin out as well. You can see they did a wonderful job of not painting the back of the gears. So if you wanted to do a little touch-up while they're out, you could. You know, colored Sharpie or some paint. There we go. So all 4 gears are out. So with the 3 of the gears taking the shaft out with it and the 4th one not, I still can't drop this out the bottom because that shaft is stuck in the hole. And of course it's recessed. So let me see if I can get it out. So 45-degree offset pliers work decently to get it. Let's see if I can get this metal shaft out. The noise you just heard was not anything breaking. That was the needle nose smacking themselves when I pulled when they slid off the shaft. What you're hearing is this snapping. So, no breakage, no concern. So those aren't working. Let's try some straight line ones. They have these will flex more at the tip because the longer and thinner metal. These being shorter and more rigid and straight line, I might be able to get a better grip and get more teeth sunk into it so I can pull it straight out. Of course, this being a porcelain house, you got to be slightly more careful because there we go. So, and then I dropped it. So, porcelain is a lot more brittle than, of course, plastic. That's one of the advantages of plastic. You have to be a lot more careful with the porcelain so you don't break it. So here we go. There's your mechanism. And here's more of the backer. All right. I'm assuming the motor's bad. It's usually the biggest cause. This is an SRF 300CA 11,400 RPM motor, which I have one left. The problem is they're not marked. I think it's this one. Could be wrong. Or it's this guy. One of the two. I separated them so I know that one is slower than the other, and of course I didn't mark them. You know, no reason to think in advance. That makes too much sense. That one seems pretty slow. What I'm doing is I have my volt machine set at 4.5 volts, which is what these run at in these units. Maybe it is the faster one. Oh yeah, this is the faster one, I'm sorry. Yeah, this one's the slow one, so I'll set it over there. We got more foam right here. What I want to do though, before I tear it all apart, let's plug it in and manually assist the movement to see if it'll start to spin. There we go. And I know to the one person that recommended the foam, I know I didn't put it out, sorry. It's got something sitting on it so I don't lose any of the parts because I'm waiting for the part to come in and I have it set perfectly, so I just lifted the foam up and moved it. I should probably get a second piece of foam. Yep, that motor is not moving at all. And when I turn the pulley, it's actually pulling the belt over the pulley, and the motor isn't moving, so it's seized, which is why it's so noisy. Well, the wire just broke. Maybe that was because the wire was touching the casing. Maybe the because it's frayed, and I just pulled on it and it snapped. Maybe it was arcing. So let's try this again. Well, this time though, I'm going to reconnect the wire. See if I get it better connection. Still sounds horrible. Hey, you know, the motor's actually spinning, but the belt's not. So it's probably going to need a belt. What I'm doing is I'm checking the gears, like I normally do. I'm rotating the gears, and then looking at the teeth. Looking for a crack or the feeling of a separated gear where it gives you that stop point. I'm trying to get all this foam out of here. Foam everywhere. So the only gear I can't see very well is the transfer gear from the pulley to the rest of the mechanism. Now I'm looking at the gears that drive these, and then we'll take it all apart, because the belt is slipping, it's vulcanized, and the motor might still have to be replaced. This is cracked. I don't know if you can see it in the camera. So that's something. Alright, let's see. How do you come apart? Looks like it comes apart from the back and the bottom. So there's a screw, and two screws there. Possibly a screw up top. Nope. And then these screws take this belt off. You can probably get these two screws without removing this belt. That screw, and then this screw, and this screw. And it should separate it from the front plate. So we'll start with the hard screws and see if we have to take the top plate off or not. That one came out without any issues. Let's try the second one. Might be a little harder because of the speaker, so no, you do have to take the top plate off. So top plate screws have a tapered head to fit in the recessed holes. The bottom plate screws have a button head because they don't recess, so they should be pretty obvious so you don't screw them up. But again, if you want to separate your screws for each section, please do so. So once that's done, that pops right off. There's your mechanism. So you have your drive, which is this guy here. You have your idler, and then you have these, which also act as idler, so when the belt bounces, and then it also adds a little tension by not allowing the belt to be flat, it adds the bowed section, so that way the belt is tensioned. Some of the other pieces actually have a spring-loaded tensioner, while this one just has 4 floating wheels to stretch the belt over. So with this top plate off, which has nothing more than just the holes for the alignments and the screws, you can now get to this one a lot easier. Like that. And like that. And Yeah. And then there's one right smack dab between the motor and the speaker, just above the circuit board. And the circuit board's held in with 2 screws, one on each end. There's a perpendicular board solder to it, which is your blob chip plate, which is this bar right here. If you think you're going to break the wires, take a picture, especially because these are really brittle. I might take a picture of them in a moment so I know. Get the foam out of here. Now we're going to take the 2 screws that are on the bottom plate out. And these are different than the other ones, so you really can't screw them up. These are pan head. So they got the big flat disc that looks like a washer. So the tension has fallen out, so we'll take the belt out. And we'll take the wheels out so we don't lose them. So that one should be pressed. Yeah, it's pressed onto the gear, so that one shouldn't fall out. And I'm not seeing any other screws. Doing the picture thing I was talking about, which is absolutely blurry. Let's try this again. Perfect. Now this back plate is also slid in and glued. So once the glue breaks free, you have to slide the plate up, and it's not going to come out. Now you're going to have to disassemble the whole thing. The shaft that goes all the way through to the front is in the way. So I thought we could save some time, but we can't. So same thing on this. The 2 bottom ones are pan heads. Again, we got the spacers. There's the drive that drives both belts, 2 pressed on pulleys with the drive gear in the middle. And the shaft is flush on both ends. So if that gear breaks, you'll have to prop one side off and put the gear in the middle. That would be a really hard gear to probably break. Not a lot of stress on it. Get the hot glue off. So apparently it's really stuck on this side. There we go. The other pulleys. There we go. So yeah, you have to take the front one off too. But with it off now, you can see that crack better. So I'm not sure how that happened. It almost looks like the screws would be too tight, but the screws have standoffs which prevent you from bowing it. I'm not sure why it bowed or if it's just age. But technically, as long as this plate stays these other three, the center crack doesn't matter because that goes all the way through to the drive mechanism. The other three have bushings in the holes. We need to make sure those stay in alignment. I'll probably clean this out and put a little super glue in there to help bond it back together before we're all done. So this is the drive that goes from the back to drive those gears on the front. So you got your little, it looks like a 14 tooth. Yeah, 14 tooth and your standard large gear. I don't know what Lemax calls them, but the gear has a number 1 stamped on it. This is a very common gear. I probably have 60 of these things that I bought because on the older pieces like this was the gear that always broke. Not like the newer ones where it's the impossible gear. So, like the shooting gallery, this gear was the gear that always broke a tooth or 2 or 7. It was really common. So on these older porcelain pieces, that was a pretty common gear to break. So another idler. So you have your little gear pack here. You got your motor, but you can get to the 2 screws right there. Which is also how you have to get to take the belt off. So you need a small tip Phillips to unscrew them. Try not to lose them. So if they get stuck to your screwdriver, now make sure that you relocate it. Some of the packs you can order online with motors do actually come with screws. Not all of them though. So there's the motor. Here's the vulcanized belt that doesn't want to turn anymore. It's kind of stuck in the teardrop shape. So that's the reason it's not rotating. Now with the wire being broken, it's broke really close to the casing. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to fix it. But let's try. If not, replacement's right there. So I'm going to try and strip a little more off of the motor side. Probably going to have to use flush cutters and hope it doesn't break the wire. Nope, broke the wire. So that's done. Again, if you missed it, it's an SRF-300CA. Hopefully you can read it. With a 11,440 RPM, and then the secondary part number is 030105. Very standard motor. SRF is the 11,000 one. The 300CA by itself is like 6,800 RPM. And then there's another one that's like FRF or something like that, or CRF, and it's right around 8,000 to 9,000 RPM. I recommend the slightly slower ones on the large rotating mass versions, such as the roundabout, because the slower ones have a higher torque. The higher speed ones have more speed, but less torque. This doesn't have a lot of torque requirements. You could probably get away with the slower one on here as well. It just means that the belts would move at probably 25% less speed. And the only reason I may suggest a slower one for this is because when these belts get vulcanized and are not pliable, it takes more force to rotate them. More force means the motor has to, well, it'll pull more power. The amperage will go up and eventually could damage the circuit board. The lower speed, higher torque ones would last longer. So, alright, so just push the pulley back on. Look good. Got some heat shrink. I'm going to slide the heat shrink onto the longer wires over here so they don't shrink prematurely from the solder. And I do try to link to all the stuff I use on the video, especially the parts, below. But if you don't see it, because I may have forgot to add it, on our Facebook page and hopefully soon our website, we'll have links to every single thing I've used in every videos that I can go back in my library and think of. So Facebook, which is the RandomJChannel, and it's pinned as a top comment, and I try to update it. Sometimes I'm not so good at it because, you know, work. I work minimum usually is 60 hours a week, and I do this in the evenings if I'm home early enough and I have nothing else to do. And this is just a hobby that got really popular on YouTube, and glad it's helping a lot of people out. And then I do it on weekends occasionally, just depending on what I have going on. So I twisted the red and black wires to each other, red to red, black to black. We're going to solder them. Then what I do is I fold it over and slide the heat shrink, and then heat shrink the connection together. If you're new to soldering, this is a lead-based solder. It's 60-40, 60 tin, 40 lead with its built-in. It has a little bit of flux on the inside. If it doesn't have enough flux, I use a flux pen or flux paste. Again, I usually link it. And if you watch a lot of my videos, you've seen me do lots and lots of soldering. Usually on copper wire, I don't have to use too much flux because copper is really good at absorbing the solder. But when I have the tin ones, I'll use flux a lot more often because tin doesn't absorb as well. Or transfer. I guess it's transfer. It's not a sponge. So I just haven't changed my tip back. I was using this tip for large solder, so what it does is it puts a ball at the end, which makes that heat shrink really hard to move. Of course, I'm not going to change the tip now because it's 250 degrees centigrade. I'll lose a little skin. So it's on. So what I'm going to do is before I heat shrink it, I am going to slide the heat shrink over it, and then I'm going to turn it on. Make sure that the motor's working like it's supposed to, and I'm not getting some weird issue. The only reason I'm sliding the heat shrink over it is in case it slips, moves, or vibrates that the contact, the metal, doesn't smack the circuit board and potentially burn something out, because that would be bad. You don't want to have a bad day. If you don't have heat shrink, you can use electrical tape, and some of these pieces they use clear tape, which I think is funny. You can use masking tape. You can use hot glue. A lot of these pieces, especially Lemax, likes to use hot glue as an insulator. You can also use liquid electrical tape, but I don't recommend covering it until you're absolutely sure everything works. So I can still slide these back and take it out. What this does is if I set it down, they don't touch each other or touch any of these metal contacts or ground out to the speaker when I test it, because the motor torque is probably going to jump. So if I'm not holding the motor, see how the motor turns? Motor torque. Oh man, that is a loud speaker. I'm going to check the speaker because I'm wondering if the crackling is the speaker's blown. And since the speaker's right here, let's take a gander at it before we reassemble. The motor's spinning fine, and the torque you saw makes it jump around, hence the reason I cover the contacts before I turn it on. If you don't want to do that, you can just make sure it's out of the way and it doesn't touch anything. So once you get the hot glue off, it's just 2 screws that generally hold in all these speakers. In some cases you can just unscrew one screw and slide it out from the other, which is what I'm going to do because that screw is stripped out, almost like somebody tried changing this once before. That speaker is crispy. Okay, I'm going to, it's an 8 ohm 0.4 watt speaker. I'm going to go see if I have another speaker, because This one's going bad. If you press the cone on a speaker and it's crunchy, it's usually an indication that it's failing. This one's crunchy, probably because it's 17 years old. It's really crunchy right here. They're plastic, and the plastic gets brittle, and right in here, it's really crunchy. Well, it's not up here. So some of that excess noise can be a bad speaker. So I'm going to go find a speaker in just a second here. Get more of this off. And we're also going to get a belt. And my standard thing about the belts is I get my belts from Skull Crane Electronics. I'll put a link below. I'm not endorsed by them yet or paid for. I buy these all myself. They're $13 a pack, and I usually buy two packs at a time. This last time I bought from Skull Crane, I actually bought 4 to take advantage of their New Year's sale. So it was like buying 3 and getting 1 free. I like their belts. I mention it quite often. So Skull Crane has good belts. So good. Heat shrink. You can use a heat gun or a lighter, whichever you have. Done. That fast. Beautiful stuff. Now, this one's a little trickier to put the belt on, I'm not going to lie, because the motor is facing down and the other pulley's facing up. So you have a good chance that when you put it on that you can actually knock it off of one of the 2 pulleys. So I'm going to try and keep pressure on it with my finger and line up at least one of the screw holes, get this thing started. I don't have the hole perfectly straight. There we go. And that way I can let go of it and then adjust it with my other, to line up the other hole. Magnetic tipped electronics screwdrivers help a lot, especially on this one where the motor is recessed in a plastic housing. Right there. Like so. There we go. I had to see how many actually watch the videos and listen to them. This was asked at one of the villaging things that I go to. I do villaging stuff here in Arizona. What got you into it? Put your comments below. I'm curious. I got into it because I like Halloween. I wanted to own my own Halloween haunted house. And since I can't afford it, if you go to the bank and ask for a loan to start a business to do a haunted house, they just laugh at you. And so I just started collecting mini villages, made my own little Halloween town, and of course Halloween's pretty popular. I mean, you got The Nightmare Before Christmas with Halloween Town in it, and of course there's always horror movies in general. And then of course, you know, the Addams Family, the Munsters, the old and the new. So that's what got me into this. And then the repairs, that's just because I have to fix my own stuff. And I just started doing it so others could learn. And now people send me stuff that I can fix that I've never worked on before. So I can learn more about other pieces, and those out there who have other pieces can learn how to fix it themselves. Especially if they live in a foreign country where shipping would be astronomically high and probably wouldn't survive either direction. So Sometimes it doesn't survive just going across state lines, let alone across international borders. Yeah, it's one of those things. Just curiosity. What caused you to collect your village? Whether it be Christmas, Halloween, Americana, or anything in between, or both, all of the above. It's always interesting to hear what people have to say. I think part of it was my grandpa that got me into it. He was a train person. He had an entire basement was trains. Cut holes in the walls. The trains would go all throughout the basement, up and down ramps he built that goes up to the top of a door frame. And of course, if you have a big train set, you're going to have houses and cars and people and all that other stuff. So I think that might have also helped. So a combination of loving Halloween as a holiday. Well, let me rephrase that. As a day, because it's technically not a holiday. Now, if I became president, it would be. And the trains, I think that's what got me into collecting the Halloween villages. I do like the Christmas ones to look at. I like the lights and the layouts. But I'm not a Christmas fan like some. I am more of a Halloween fan. Cut the speaker out. Because it's, like I said, it's crispy on the bottom. I have some speakers in here. Let's see if I have any in my speaker box before I go to my wall of parts houses. So, but yeah, it's always interesting to see what gets people into these things. Piezo. For 4 ohm. Oh, that'd be even louder. Probably sound better, but louder. It's already deafening enough. All right, so yep, I'm gonna have to go find one of the parts houses that has a good speaker. I'm sure there is one since I have. Oh, I got a parts house over here. Give me just a second. Little prior here. Nope, it's the newer style that the speaker's 1.5 times larger. So, bear with me for a minute. I'm going to go find this size speaker, and not the one that's going to go up to here. And let's get this thing swapped out, give it another test with it apart, and put it back together, slide it in. Should be good. The great thing about something like this with it coming out is you can actually build all this back together, test it all, minus these gears here, out here before sliding it inside and readhering the bottom and all that. So stuff that has a center section that can be removed sometimes makes it a little bit easier to test, as you don't have to reassemble the whole house, because nothing outside of what fits on this plastic plate moves in any fashion. So all right, I'll return here in just a moment with a new speaker and we'll get this thing done. All right, I got a speaker to replace the bad one. It is this guy. So you can hear it's just me tapping, but when I push, it's relatively quiet. You hear this one's crunchy. So same speaker. It's a modern one from the newer stuff. Still the same part numbers, the whole 9. This one just has the Molex style plug, which will cut off and just solder. So throw that one in the garbage. And let's get this tested out. So, first thing I'm gonna do is get some heat shrink, cut and prepped. And I could make this really long like it is. I see no point, so I am going to shorten it dramatically. We'll trim up the wires, we'll strip the wires. We're going to see if we can make this sound a little bit better. The other option is it might have a dirty volume knob, or it's going out, or the sound chip or components related to it are going out. I think a lot of the noise, though, is the fact that the speaker is crunchy. I should have put these on before I stripped it. And crunchy speakers, they don't sound the greatest, whether it's in a car or your home audio system or any of these. I know I have one that's going out on one of my pieces I haven't had a time to work on, mainly because I'm working on all these other ones. But I will get it done before I show the display towards the end of this year. Because even with the volume knob down, because when you turn your volume knob down, you're not killing the volume completely to the speaker. It's just at a level that's not perceivable to your ears anymore. And the speaker is so bad that it has a popping sound. And I know it's a speaker because I've reached in through the access, and if I put something on the cone, because it's one of the ones that has the paper cone, not the plastic. Lemax has used different ones over the years. The noise goes away. So the speaker's popping. So it's either got a blown cone or it has a bad component. Normally it's a blown cone. So, but I'll get that one worked on. And it'd be interesting to show you how to take it apart, since I have seen people in the forums ask how to take that specific house apart. It's an older piece. I can't remember the name, but it's a mortuary. And it has a rotating base. And it's got little people in the front that jump up in or pop up in a coffin. It's got so. But eventually, down the road. So, like normal, just sliding the heat shrink over, and before I melt it, we're gonna turn it on. Let's get it off the bench so it doesn't vibrate. Well, it does sound clearer. It's still loud. This one's obnoxiously loud. But I can hear that the crackling sound's gone, so that's good. It doesn't have a blown cone anymore. So, all right. Normally these little speakers, when I replace them, I just get them from other houses that I've taken apart. But if you need to replace one, you can match up the part number. It is 361N-N. The company's abbreviation is T like Tom, L like Lion. It is an 8 ohm 0.4 watt speaker. Some of them are 0.5 watt speakers out there. These are slightly louder. And you can find them online from Amazon and eBay. If I remember, I'll try and post a link to one for y'all, just in case you need a speaker. Sometimes if you just go to the store and find a cheap electronics toy that makes sounds from like Goodwill, that's a couple dollars, you can buy one there. Do that too, where I take them out of other stuff. This one came out of the parts house that I used to fix the ghoulish gourd, and the speaker's pristine. Parts house wasn't, but the internal components were. That was the whole point of getting the parts house. So yeah, it's definitely loud. I don't know if you saw the mechanisms are spinning. So now it's time to try and remember how to reassemble this. So I'm missing a piece. It's right there. I'll probably just reassemble it from the front going back. So first thing I need is that gear I just dropped. Might have to look at the picture on the box again, or rewind the video. Because when I went and got the speaker, I got a phone call, and then, well, 2 days later, I'm now doing the speaker. Give me a second. I gotta go get that gear I dropped. It's all the way behind my workbench. I'll be back in a second. Alright, sorry about that. Once I dug it out, I tried sliding it back in. It kept shooting out, so I assembled the front to start, so I'd stop dropping the parts. My bench is level, but this pad is warped, so things catch it and then roll off. Of course, when they fall, they go all the way to the back. So, it's kind of a pain, but it's the same as when I took it apart, just reverse. But I'm not going to lie, it's not the easiest thing to get these things to stay in, because also I was putting it on sideways. Didn't realize that when I was assembling it. So I just slid it in part way so the top was open, and with the tweezers I fed all the rollers. Now on the rollers, the flat side's what faces out, so it looks like a roller, not the side that looks like a gear. So that way you have the roller look. And then once I got them in, just to make sure I didn't break anything and all the alignment's good, so everything moves. Okay. So now we'll get the back one put together. Oh, yeah. Because, you know, if you just drop all these in, they're very easy. Like that. The hard part's once you put a belt on them. Once you put the belt on them, they don't like to stay. And they have a tendency of flying everywhere. So, and I'm also going to have to hot glue these wires down. So that way they don't get caught on the belt. The toy belt, that is. Now, if you forget which way the belt goes, as far as direction of motion, on each belt there is something like a house or a doll or a bear that faces out. So you don't put the belt on backwards. And this is where it becomes more difficult, because when you try and stretch the belt over, you need to try and stretch the belt to where you're stretching at 2 points where there's no toys. And when you try and stretch it, it starts to come apart like that. So after several attempts on the other one, the easiest way I found to do it, which still wasn't easy, don't get me wrong, the belt has to be taut or else it'll slip, was to put the belt on with one of the pulleys or idlers missing, and then feed the idler in at the same time as stretching it. I'm going to use the second pulley to do that. So I'm going to put this idler back. Make sure I put it in the right way. Just about put it in upside down. Won't affect the function, just the appearance. And that. So now there's tension on the belt, but it's not correct. And the reason I did it this way, and this is how I did the other one, is because you have more grip on this with its shape, kind of like a bobbin from a sewing machine. And with my finger holding the outer one so it doesn't shoot back off, I stretch the belt up enough to where I can get it to slide into its groove, and we're good. And then the tension square so it holds it in place. And now we take the backer plate and then we line up all the holes. And Murphy dictates they're not all going to line up. So tweezers or narrow needle nose pliers to help get them all to drop into place will probably make it slightly easier. And the front one had the button tops, and the back one has the tapered screws. So that. I usually start screwing when I'm doing toy belts, because Mr. Christmas has this style as well, or anything that has a belt drive. That with the big fat conveyor belts, is I start on the ends where the most tension is, and that's going to be closest to opposite ends. So I always start on the outer two, then I do the other ones, because the other ones are mostly there just to secure the plate, not to secure the belt. So you don't want your put all back together and then have it pop off, because that's what happened to me when I came back up with that gear. I started putting the front one together just to save on time, and when I went to go put it in, the plate shifted and they went funk and flew out, and that was kind of annoying. So there we go. Look at that. So they're working. Do not forget about the flat or pan head screws to hold the pieces down so that they don't come out. Technically, you don't have to re-hot glue them. When I fire the hot glue up to glue those wires on the back, I should probably do that now because it takes a minute for this thing to get the temperature. I'll probably put a dab on it just to prevent these screws from backing out. Now remember, the gears, they go through the front, so don't stick them on now. But what you can do is, if you're testing it, I always recommend test it as you're working on it to make sure that nothing's interfering, there's no binding, so on and so forth. You can look and see the gears moving, so that way you know that the gears back here will spin the 3 drives in the front. this back down. Hopefully, here we go. And then we're going to put a dab of glue down here to hold all these wires. That's basically how you take this thing apart and work on the insides. Now, if your sound is really crappy, this one's probably not as good as it was when it was new, but it's not super horrible. It is louder than I think it should be because it's almost to a distortion level. The little circuit board here, there's a sound chip. The sound chip is these pins right in here. Next to it is a capacitor and a resistor. Check those, make sure they're good. Check your speaker. This one, like I said, the original one was blown. And then lastly, unless you can feel it, check your volume knob. Now, when I have it on, if I wiggle the knob, there's no static. It doesn't change tone unless I go to full power. So it might be the knob. It's hard to tell. Sometimes diagnosing sound is really tough. I'm not going to lie. I tell that to a lot of the emails I get. And that's because there's so many different things can affect the sound on these houses, from this volume knob to the components to the blob chip, the amplifier chip. When it comes to sound repairs, I'm not going to lie. I have about a 50% success rate. Because a lot of the times it's the component on the board, especially the amplifier chip. It blows out. Or the blob chip doesn't send the signal. So that's how you take it apart. Most of these are not glued together, so you can just pry them apart with your fingernails. You have to take the little screw out. What surprised me about this one is the newer ones, because of the age of this, have a little piece of plastic here that this loops around to give it strain relief. This one was hot glued in place, and the hot glue has gotten brittle and, well, it doesn't stick. So, but, and then you can unscrew the little screw, and then you got two other screws on each end that you can pull out. There's 5 wires soldered to it, in which you can check the solder joints and check for corrosion. And in some cases it's the arm, the sweep arm, that gives you the loud to quiet range that is bad, and you can replace these. They do sell them. So when this is done, I'll probably take this out because my hot glue's ready, and we'll do some cleaning. I'll take some alcohol and I'll try and do a cleaning on the sweeper and see if that helps with some of the abrupt loud. But it doesn't have the telltale signs of failure, which is the wobble and the static. But it is an older piece, and sometimes older stuff is better quality because it wasn't built as cheaply, and it wasn't built to fail as fast. So yeah. So if you have the Tinkertown Toy Factory and you want to take it apart, not too terribly difficult. Pop the bottom off, pry out the plastic piece here, and everything's in the central hub. Just be careful the wires go in. You got the red and white power wire. You have a red and white power wire that goes in here, which has a little distribution board that then powers all the lights. So light. So, and then watch the wires that come off of the volume switch. Now, you can break the glue around the volume switch, because again, this doesn't have any strain relief. I'm surprised that even at 17 years ago, I figured they would use strain relief. And you can actually pull this into the unit to give you more slack. And if worst case, you can cut these wires, just mark them so you know where they are, because all the wires are the same colors that go into the house, but they come from different sources. There we go. So the glue is set. That's what I've been doing, is just holding it in place. Now, let's get this fed in here. Try not to get it caught in anything. Now, because this has got a huge open area, I am looking down from the top to make sure that the wires that are in here, factory, the red and white ones, don't get caught in anything. They didn't get caught in anything, but one of the 4 didn't go in. So, got to push it in. So I'm just going to pop this out a little, and I'm going to help it in with some tweezers. That's why I always tell you, double check your stuff as you're going around and test it. So this red and white wire, or the red wire that popped out, is from the power port where you plug in your AC adapter. So now it's back in, and now I'm going to double check to make sure that I see nothing caught on the top, because that red and white wire have to have slack or to never get it out. I want to make sure it doesn't catch the belts. So it is working. I'm going to turn it back off. I'm going to set her back down, and I'm going to glue the base on. I'm not going to leave it like it was, where it was just held on with the foam rubber. So I'm going to put back its original bead of glue. Now when you do this, don't squeeze it too big into the top where it runs down its side and hits the mechanism. I have done that before by accident. One of my more recent videos, when I was rebuilding that broken ski lift or ski trail, I squeezed too much glue in there, and it got on the rollers I installed, and I had to take it back apart and take the glue off. So to stop yourself from doing your job twice, be careful. But you can still make mistakes. Generally, stupid glue strings, generally they're easily rectified, and that's how we learn. That's kind of how I learned how to do all this. I tinkered around with stuff until I could figure out how to do it, and hopefully do it with less problems. So make sure nothing's bound. Toys are moving. So turn off the glue gun. There we go. Just so I don't glue my bench, or glue this to my bench, I'm going to set it onto its factory platform. I've mentioned this before. You can hot glue them back on, or I use spray adhesive I use Gorilla brand. I like it better. So I'm going to go grab that, and I'll be back so we can get this bottom on, and then we'll work on hot gluing everything else. Be back in a moment. Alright, so that's what I use. Now off camera I was shaking the can, so you don't have to listen to the rattling the whole time. So I recommend you use it in and that's what I mean about the hot glue. I don't want to glue this to my bench. So normally you do this outside. I'm doing it in my laboratory. I have fans in here. They're currently off, but I'll probably be turning them on shortly. So make sure it's shaked. Make sure it's shook. And then tells you to do it like 12 inches away. I'm going to tell you, sorry, 6 to 8. I'll tell you, if you're doing it on a workbench, cover it with something if you're going to be farther away so you don't get sticky. And then also what I like about the Gorilla versus the other ones, because I've used like the 3M and somebody else, their nozzle is a much tighter spray, so you can get closer to the edges with less overspray. And their setup time is slightly longer. So if you stick it on and it's not quite right, you can tear it off or pull it off without destroying it. You let it set for a minute. You can use rubber contact cement to do this too. Same principle. Slather it on, let it sit for 20-30 seconds, and then squish them together. Get a longer seal. I used to just hot glue them back on, but hot glue, as you're going across, can get lumpy. If you're going to do hot glue and you want it more smooth, hot glue an inch or so, smush it on. An inch or so, smush it on. That way the glue doesn't have a chance to dry into lines of hot glue. Sure Bonder, which is the hot glue sticks that are in here, these suckers glue very strong. There's a very strong bond. So if you don't have it nice, you're gonna have lines because it's gonna cure fast. But I like Sure Bonder because it's a much stronger glue. And I have, over the years, tried everything from Ace Hardware's brand, which are really good, to Gorilla's brand, 3M. There's so many companies that make hot glue, and the Sure Bonder ones seem to be the best. So there, it's nice and good. Only hollow spots is where there's, well, indentations in the porcelain. We definitely want to fix the broken stuff, like this and the horse. Now I use generally the Gorilla Glue with the brush when I'm out, and so the blue is pretty much the same stuff, just minus the brush. That's the nice thing about the brush, is you don't have to wait for the glue to get back to the bottom. It probably helps. Also, horse no sign, horse sign. Little moisture on the part you're bonding to will also allow it to bond faster. So if you put your finger in water and put a little bit of water on it, not droplets of water, just to make it damp or moist, it'll bond quicker. You can get the spray to make it bond faster as well. Checking to see how it fits in the cracked part. And then make sure you store your glue upright so it doesn't glue the cap on. And make sure your surfaces are somewhat clean, and then just hold it in place for a few seconds, unless you have the accelerator. There we go. Going to be pushing these in a second. I need to apparently go look at the box, which is not here, because I don't remember where the red, blue, and yellow gear went in relationship to the black center gear. That way it's back to original, because they all fit in each other's holes. And they don't hit each other, so they're not going to interfere. But that way it looks like it did when I got it. So bear with me for another moment. That'll also give it a chance for that to cure. And then when I come back, we'll get it all fired up. We'll just look at it in low light and normal light. And well, I guess actually real fast, let's take this out and take a quick look at it. So take the center screw, don't lose it. Pop off your cover. which is your wheel. Now, I've noticed the new pieces for 2022, and I'm sure 2023 is going to be no different. They don't put a screw on the wheel, and that's kind of an annoying thing because it's not a easily located screw. And when you buy replacement ones from them, like Amazon, they don't come with them. They only come with this. I'm inspecting the glue joints, or should be solder joints. And then on some are white, some are red. You can pull this cover off, and then you can inspect the copper and the brass sweep arms. I'm going to use some magnifiers so I can get a closer look. I'm going to turn the arms, and I'm going to see what's going on. The arms look good, there's no corrosion. That's why I was using the magnifiers. Everything moves smoothly, clicks. If I wiggle it with the pliers, there's no static, because the pliers will give me more leverage to make something move than my fingers would with the wheel. I'm going to think some of the loudness issues is probably the components on the board. I think might have a component that's either failing or it's overdriving. But it can also be the fact that the speaker is right here in the front. It's a porcelain house and it reverberates the sound. If you have a speaker problem or it's too loud, just don't turn your wheel as far. I know it sounds kind of a cheap way and kind of a crappy thing to say, but you want to make sure you still have your sound if you like it, because unfortunately I have a house that I try to fix the sound chip, and now I went from having really loud sound to now it's got no sound, because in the process of trying to repair the component's resistance level was slightly different than the OEM, and it burned out. So I'd rather you have sound that you may think is obnoxiously loud, just adjust your wheel if it still adjusts, than to have no sound whatsoever. Like I said, sound issues are hit or miss, and they're kind of a crappy deal. So let's put a little loop in here to make it a strain relief, which means it's going to shorten the wire by about 1 inch. But I'd rather there be a little strain relief in here than 0 like they did. So basically, strain relief, if you don't know the term, strain relief is something you put on a wire generally, and it can probably be used on rubber hose as well, because I have strain relief on my air compressor, so I don't yank the hose and break the fitting on the tank. But what it does is, if the wire gets yanked, instead of it pulling directly on its contact points where it's soldered right here on the switch, it pulls on a joint of glue or a pinch. Some have a compression, and what that does is it prevents you from breaking the other end that it's connected to. So that's all strain relief is. Some people don't know the term. If you work with especially anything electrical, strain relief is very common in the industry, and it is used as a safety feature. Lemax has modified these switches, these switch casings, over the years to add that bar I was talking about, which goes right here where that loop is I made, which would be the strain relief. And then the compression of the box prevents you from pulling through the bar, because the bar has an indentation on the other side it clips into. So I'm going to make my own strain relief, which is going to be hot glue and a curve. But anytime you add strain relief, you are shortening the distance of your connection. So the old crimp point is right back here, which is right there. So it's about an inch. But again, it's one of those things where I'd rather it not get broken than it get busted. So I know I show you all how to fix them, but if you can prevent them from breaking in the first place, the stuff you can control, then that's the best thing to do. So again, sorry, I got to pause the video because I forgot the pattern of the gears. Like I said, it's been 2 days because things happen in life. And I'm going to go get the box, which I have in the other room, and figure out where the 3 gears go so it matches the original picture. And then we'll do the low light and no light and all that stuff. And then we'll get this sent back to the owner. Be back in a moment. All right, we're back. So this way you can turn the noise down so we can actually hear. Here you go. Belts are moving. It's nice and smooth. Gears rotating. And all the lights are working. This looks sideways. The sign didn't fall off. The boom arm didn't fall off. Light on the side's on right there. This side only has the light up top, which is on. That's illuminating down. And we got the sides. Everything's up and functional. Again, it's loud. Don't get me wrong. It's ungodly loud when you go to full volume. But if you go to half volume, it's tolerable, and it works. It works. So, lights coming back. Like that. So I did, like I said, went and got the box so I could see the colors. And there, so they're right there. The so not overly difficult to do. It is a pretty basic house, which is kind of nice, and it needed a belt, a motor, and a speaker, which I'll try and link them all below. The belts, like I said, I get them from Skull Crane. I get the multi-packs. I actually buy a lot from them, but that's what I get. And you can see the price right there is $12.99. And you get 3 10 mils, 3 20 mils, 3 30 mils, 3 40 mils, and 3 50 mil belts. I have a lot of the 50s and 40s left because I don't use too many, but I like their belts. They're really nice because a lot of the animatronics that these belts are used for are outdoors, so they have a little bit more longevity. So I'm gonna clean this up, get it ready to go back. So recap, overview, however you want to do. Fill your bottom off. If it tears, you can get the generic mats like this one has and cut it to fit. Easy way to do it is stick it on the mat, cut it around with an X-Acto, one of those, and you're good to go, like this one. You can get it off without tearing it. Use double adhesive spray, put it back on. Pull the bottom out. Careful of the wires, because the wires that come in from the power and the wires that go up to the lights are the same colors. They're red and white. And if you reverse them, you're going to destroy the circuit board, possibly, and you will definitely, if you put 4.5 volts to these lights, they'll burn out. So make sure you careful when you pull your wires out. As far as, and take a picture of the circuit board. So if you break any wires off the board, you can reattach them. Once you get it out, you saw there's a handful of screws, and then you separate the 3 layers to get to the motor, the belt, and the speaker, as an example. If you break a drive gear, you got the box with the drive gears right back in here as well, and you can repair that as needed. When you put it back together, like I said, the belts have a front and a back, because like the teddy bear, if you put him in backwards, he's facing the wall. And then on the bottom belt, you have a house, and the back of the house is just smooth. So same thing, you'll know which way to put it. And the longer belt goes in the one that goes up, and the shorter belt goes in the one that goes horizontal. So once it's all done, just reverse your order of disassembly and put it back together. Make sure you're relatively aligned, and make sure nothing binds. You don't catch any of those wires. If you see one sticking out, carefully lift it down, push it back inside. I would recommend hot gluing the wires to that plate when you stick it in, so they don't get caught on one of the toys as it goes around and potentially wedges it or rips the wire off, because you might lose your lights or all the power if it rips the wires off the circuit board. Careful, because there is no strain relief on this one. So if you're working with this piece, or you're working with it in here, there is no strain relief. Their strain relief is a dab of hot glue. If you yank on the back of this, because that hot glue is brittle, you could slide this out and be like, oh, it's a little longer now, yay. You're going to put more tension on the wires that are soldered to the board. So careful. Sure, most of the older ones of this era probably don't have any strain relief. So just be forewarned. Watch for the strain relief. This box now has the strain relief in it. It, like I said, did shorten this almost an inch. Hopefully it's not too much of a deal where this goes in his display, but I'd rather that than him pull this, because we're all lazy. But I'd rather him do this and say, oh, my house is crooked, and then he just pulls the wire to straighten it, but he doesn't pull the wire, he pulls the box. So, and I'm not saying he's going to do that. I'm just saying that humans, we're inherently lazy. If we find a faster, quicker way of doing something that requires less exertion, we're going to do it. We're all guilty of it. So, but there it is. Tinkertown Toy Factory porcelain house from 2005, rebuilt. All porcelain except for the center section, which is plastic. And surprisingly, in shipping, not too much damage. Just the crane arm and the horse, because this got bounced around in its box and it has a hole. That concerned me when I got it. This right here was sticking out of the hole right here. So this outcropping of stairs had poked through, because it doesn't have foam. It's just wrapped in bubble wrap and stuff. So when it goes back, I'll wrap it a little bit tighter. I'll probably put some tape over the hole just to give the box a little bit more reinforcement. It didn't just be shipped in this box, it was shipped in the bigger box, but just to restructure that one so it's nice and rigid. But appreciate you watching. Till the next one, when we're going to repair whatever else shows off my bench. And don't forget, I know it's halfway through the month of January. Every month this year, at the beginning of every month, we're giving away a house or a house accessory for Department 56 or Lemax, or heck, I might even throw a Hawthorne Village in there, or Mr. Christmas. But it will be through the entire year, once a month, first day, we'll be drawing the name of the winner from the previous month, and then showing you what's going to be that month. All you got to do is enter a comment below on that video. Just go back through the catalog closer to the beginning of every month, and you'll find it. It'll say giveaway 2023, February, March, January, December, etc. And just any comment. Doesn't matter what it is, what it says. No big deal. It could just be an emoji. It doesn't matter. Just something so I see a name, and that'll get you entered into the running. So this month, January. Next month, February, and the following month, March, are all going to be Christmas. So if you're a Christmas collector, the first 3 months will be Christmas. April will probably be Halloween. So if you're waiting for Halloween, you have to wait a couple months. It's just the way that I set them up to give all this stuff away. The majority of the stuff is brand new in its package, or it was a display from a store. So it sat like this, was on display, put back in its original packaging, dusted off, and then there you go. So gently used might be the best way to say it. So, and a lot of these pieces are older. Some of them are new, not new, but newer, like 2022. And yeah, every month. Might even throw a couple other ones in when we get closer to the holidays. So maybe we'll do 2 in a month. But at the moment, once a month, next 12 months, village pieces and accessories. So, all right, till the next one. Thanks for watching.